Hello, I'm Erin J. Doyle. Welcome to my channel. This is, I think, the 11th take of this video because I keep messing up in the very beginning. And I find that really frustrating. Also, I have become aware that my shirt is insanely crinkly, but we're going to ignore that one. I'm not going to get up and put a different shirt on. We aren't here for aesthetics, we're here for content. The problem is, I'm also having issues getting the content out of my mouth. Anyway, so what I'm attempting to talk about in this video, I'm attempting to make, is my efforts to find comparable titles for my Camino story to make the whole pitching it thing easier. So, I have previously read 2 other books about the Camino de Santiago and found similarities between my book and those, but I have decided not to use those as comp titles. So the first one is The Camino Club by Kevin Craig, I believe. Now I actually made a dedicated video about this book several years ago. I will link it, but I warn you in advance. It was when I first started making videos. I'm talking insanely slowly for no apparent reason, and it's fuzzy. It was like out of focus, and for some reason I was just like, you know, that's fine, and posted it anyway. I do not endorse the quality of that video, but the content is okay if you can handle the talking very slowly with significant pauses. But if you don't want to tolerate that video, fair enough. The summary was that this was a young adult novel about a group of kids who are made to walk a portion of the Camino de Santiago after having various run-ins with the law, and they're kind of given the option of juvenile detention or this hike along with a couple of counsellors. And in that original video, I did discuss some quite striking similarities between that and my book, which is also set on the Camino de Santiago. It's also fiction, but has a mature woman walking alone. She walks the entire thing, not just a small portion of it. Or that's actually incorrect phrasing. If you have walked 100 kilometers of the Camino de Santiago, you've walked it. The kids in the Camino Club walk 228 kilometers, I think, from Ponferrada to Santiago de Compostela. In my book, the main character starts in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is 778, I think, or maybe 75 kilometers from Santiago de Compostela. So when I say the whole thing, what I'm actually meaning is that my character walks the entirety of the French way, which is one of many different paths that you can walk to get to Santiago de Compostela. They all count as the Camino. I totally misspoke. But anyway, so these kids walk a smaller distance. They're in a group, they have a counsellor, obviously they're a different age category. So there's lots of significant differences in terms of what the characters are going through, what their challenges are, and the category of reader that this book is aimed at. And I think for me that's the big part where I'm like, even though there is an event in the book that is almost identical to an event in my book, and some of the characters have the same conversation because of the level of similarity in the event, the fact that they're different categories for me really means that I don't want to use this as a comparable title, because if someone's interested in young adult, they aren't going to want to pick up a book about an older person. So that one actually has a striking similarity, so much so. So the author of the Camino Club and I are mutuals on Instagram. After I read his book, like the fact that I knew him on Instagram is why I read it, or how I found out about it. After I read his book, I actually went on his Instagram and spied on all his photos to confirm that we had not met on the Camino de Santiago. Because I knew he'd walked it twice, I've walked it twice. And the event that is similar in both our books is something that happened to me on the Camino. And it was so similar. I actually went through his Instagram feed and did a bit of spying and confirmed that we hadn't been there at the same time, because it was like, maybe I just don't remember, but we were actually in the same room when this happened and he witnessed it happen to me, and then that was some inspiration for his book. And no, I'm pretty sure it's a coincidence, but it was that level of holy crap. So you can see why it would be really tempting to use his book as a comparable title, but because they're different age categories, I just don't think it's going to be helpful in terms of trying to pitch a book. So I've put that one aside. The other book I've previously read is called, it's in a box in New Zealand, so I will insert it here, but I'm pretty sure it's The Way to Compostela, I think. And this is a memoir written by a New Zealand woman who walked it, I believe, in the 1990s. And then she wrote a memoir about it in 2020. So again, it was like, surely this is going to be really similar. It's another New Zealander and it's the same route. Surely it's going to be the same. But when I was reading it, I was like, actually, it's really not. Like, tonally, it's really different. And the experiences that the character have really different. And yeah, like, it just, there was nothing about it that really spoke to me of similarity. But the other reason I've also put this one on that actually it's not a comp title list is because it's actually just not a very well-known book. And if I'm trying to pitch my book to UK agents, I feel like I need to suggest comparable titles which they might actually have heard of. And a book that was only published, as far as I'm aware, only in New Zealand by a small independent publisher, they're probably not going to be aware of it, so it's not really helpful to suggest it as a comparison. So I decided I had to read some more books. So I went on a bit of a Google search and just put in some very basic keywords. I decided to move away from the Camino specifically because I have previously looked at what books are out there about the Camino and found that whilst there's a huge number of books, the majority of them are memoir and quite heavily religious, and these are not things that I would use to describe my book. Whilst it is based on my or inspired by my experiences and some of the events are true, I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's a memoir. All the characters are very fictionalized, or they're major amalgams of other characters, and the central characters of the book are fictional. So like apart from this one major event and the sort of the journey of walking the Camino itself being from my life, the main character's backstory and the things that she has to think about are completely fictional. So comparing it to a memoir doesn't feel appropriate, but also the religious thing, my character not religious, so comparing it to books which are very heavily religious doesn't seem very helpful either. So I decided, in trying to find comparable titles, to move away from using keywords about the Camino de Santiago and lean more into a woman hiking alone. So I put those words into Google, wanted to see what would come up. Unfortunately, a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't very helpful. There's a lot of murder mysteries came up, some horror came up, a lot of group hiking books came up, like a lot of stuff that wasn't quite specific in terms of what I was looking for, but I decided I just had to be open-minded in trying to find my comparable titles. And I eventually settled on 3, 2 of which are memoir. Because apparently there is just not that many hiking novels, I guess. But it's fine. I don't think the fact they're memoir ruins it. It's just not what I like set out to find, I guess. So the first one I picked up is Wild. I actually already knew this was going to be on my list because I've had 2 or 3 critique partners in the past who have compared my book too wild, so it seemed like the obvious book to go with if that's the one that people are thinking of. I have seen the movie, so I do know a little bit about this, but of course you never really know movie to book how much might be similar or changed or whatever. I don't know, like thinking about my knowledge of the movie, maybe it's a good comparison title, so I thought, yeah, probably worth giving it a read, not just because of the comments that people have made saying it's similar, but also because my knowledge of the movie suggests that, yeah, it might not be a terrible comparison, even though, based on my knowledge of the movie, what the main character goes through in terms of her backstory, well, not the main character, the author personally went through, is very different from what my fictional character has gone through. In the movie there were lots of flashbacks, there are no flashbacks in my book, so it might be super different structurally as well, but we'll give it a read and we'll see. The next one I went for is like one of the very few novels I could find that didn't involve murder. So this is Two Steps Forward, and I realised after I bought this that this, you can see on the cover, it was written by the same person as the Rosie Project. On my first Camino, I was talking to someone who was like the brother-in-law or neighbour, best friend, like had a really close connection to the author of the Rosie Project. They were talking about it. And now when I picked this book up, I was like, hang on, I wonder if that person came back and told the author about their journey and that somehow fed into this, or maybe their exciting adventure made the author go on a walk themselves. I don't know, but I thought that was too much to be a coincidence, surely, that someone you're close to walks the Camino and then you write a book set on the Camino, surely. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting coincidence that I had met them. So anyway, this is a novel about, I gather, two people walking the Camino and meeting up. I gather it's a love story, I think, which is not what my book is at all. But I thought I'd give it a go. It kept coming up. Obviously, it is the same setting, which may or may not be helpful. But I don't know. I figured I'll give it a go. And the next one I got, and the last one, is called A Walk from the Wild Edge, which I had never read, I haven't read any of these. I'd never heard of this before, but it kept coming up. It isn't about a woman, it's about a man walking in the UK. But I figured like the gender of the main character is probably not super important, but like to me it kind of feels important in that I do wonder if my book is probably going to appeal to a female audience more than a male audience because, and this is not a spoiler, it's evident in the first chapter, the main character does have to have some thoughts about her marriage. And I don't know that the types of thoughts or experiences she has might not be universal across the genders, maybe? I'm not sure. But anyway, this book kept coming up in my Google searches and I figured it seems to be well received and has like reviews from epic famous people saying it's great. So if I read it and decide, yep, that seems like a comparable title, then I mean that ticks that box of it needs to be a book that people might actually have heard of. And then my other reason for picking this up was, well, I'm currently in England. I like going for long walks. So it might actually just be fun for me to read anyway. And to be honest, that was a big reason I picked this one up. So these are the three. There is only one fiction. My book's not a memoir, but we're going to try the two memoirs. If the vibes are right, then I probably will use them as a comparable title, especially given people who have read portions of the book have said it was similar to Wiles. So if you can think of any other books that I might want to consider reading that are about a person, I guess it doesn't have to be a woman, a person going through stuff whilst hiking or having some other kind of physical journey, yeah, drop it down in the comments. I might have a look at it if these turn out to not be what I'm looking for either. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and I'll let you know how I go with these at some point in the future. It might be a while because, you know, PhDs do take some time out of your day, so I don't know how long it will take me to get through these, but I will give you an update when I have one. Bye!